Pastelles are a favorite during Christmas time in Trinidad and Tobago. They're similar to Venezuelan Hallacas, Puerto Rican Pasteles, and Mexican Tamales. Let me show you how I make Trinbagonian Pastelles. First, we have to prep the banana leaves, or fig leaves as we call it back home. If you don't have a banana tree, check your local Latin or Asian grocery for frozen or fresh leaves. Cut them into squares or rectangles and wash thoroughly with soap and water. These have to be pliable to wrap the pastels, so one way to do this is by passing it over an open flame, or if you have an electric stove, then you can pass it over an electric burner until it turns bright green and glossy. If you buy these frozen, you can skip this step because they're already pliable when they're frozen, so all you need to do is trim it and wash the leaves. You can also do this in a microwave, but that didn't work well for me. The edges were still a bit hard, so you can try it and see if it works for you. The easiest method for me is dunking the leaves in a pot of hot water and rinsing it with some cool water in the sink. Wrap tightly in foil or in plastic wrap and store it in the fridge for a few days or in the freezer for a few months. The next step is to make the filling. You can use any type of meat, seafood, or if you're vegetarian, use lentils, mushrooms, or soya, or whatever you like. Into my pan here on medium-high heat, I'm adding some avocado oil. Here I have all my aromatics and seasonings that I'll be adding into the oil. First I'm adding the onion and bay leaf and letting that saute for about 5 minutes. Then I'll add the other ingredients and let it cook and soften for another 5 minutes. Now I like to add the tomato paste and ketchup. It's important to add this early on in the cooking process, and you want to add it to the hot oil as opposed to the sauce or over the meat. As the tomato paste caramelizes in the hot oil, it releases lots of umami flavor. So that's why it's good to add it first as opposed to over the meat. So cook the tomato paste for another 5 minutes to build more flavor. Now add the ground meat in, and I'm using beef here since it's the most common meat used for pastels. Season with salt and black pepper and add some brown sugar to add more color and flavor to the meat. If you don't have brown sugar, add some white sugar and a little bit of molasses. Mix well and break up the ground beef as it cooks. Add a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce and some Angostura bitters. I'm using 73/27 beef, so it has quite a bit of fat in it. You can use a leaner meat if you want. Now add some roucou, annatto, achiote. You can find this in the form of a powder, paste, seeds or oil. I use the seeds to make the annatto liquid. This is a traditional ingredient in pastel making. Here I have some olives, capers and raisins. As much as it pains me to add these raisins, I'm doing it for the culture. I'll make another batch without raisins for me. Now the meat is fully cooked and it does have quite a bit of fat, so I'll use a ladle or a calchil to remove some of that fat. Finish with some chopped scallion or chive and some parsley and cook for a few minutes more. I like to stick the meat in the fridge for a bit to solidify the fat so it's easier to work with. Now it's time to make our corn flour dough. Now corn flour is also known as cornstarch, but the corn flour I'm using here is also referred to as fine cornmeal or masa harina. It's not as gritty as the regular cornmeal, and usually in the islands we use promasa, but Pan Yellow Cornmeal also works great for me. It's almost identical. Brands like Maseka and Masarepa are also great. To make the dough, add some hot water to a bowl. I've added hot coconut milk instead of water in the past and it's divine. You can also use chicken stock. That's how tamales, pasteles and hallacas are made, with a little bit of lard added to it too. Add salt and butter and let the butter completely melt. Add some green seasoning and minced pimentos. So one thing about pastels, you have to add lots of pimentos. Seasoning the dough is optional, but it adds so much more flavor. Now add the corn flour and mix well to prevent lumps. Different brands require different amounts of water, so follow the package instructions. You can also add the water to the corn flour instead of the way I did it. Do you know that in Puerto Rican pasteles dough they add roucou or annatto? I tried it and I absolutely love the color that it gives the dough. Now separate your dough into 12 3-ounce balls or weigh the entire dough and divide it by 12. I filled a 1/3 cup with dough and I got 3 ounces when I weighed it, so that's what I'm going with. Now it's time to assemble our pastels. If you have a pastel or tortilla press, you can use it for this, but I prefer using my hands or a spoon. Here I have all the fillings and they're all cooked the same way: beef, chicken and pork. And here are the fig leaves that I prepped earlier this week. Spray the underside of the fig leaf with some oil and place a dough ball on top of it. You can use parchment paper, cling wrap or another fig leaf in between the press and the dough. I just wrapped the top of the press with plastic wrap to make it easier. Make sure it's oiled also so that it doesn't stick. Press the dough, and as you can see, I'm not a pro with this pastel press. I much prefer using a spoon or my hands. Add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of filling and wrap the dough over the filling. Now fold the banana leaf over and make a little packet. You can steam these just like this or wrap in foil or parchment paper and tie them. I usually steam my pastels in my Instant Pot, so banana leaves are usually sufficient. If you're boiling them, make sure you tightly wrap in foil. Place the pastels in a tray and place that tray in your freezer. When they're completely frozen, then you can take them out and put them in freezer bags to be used at a later date. You can boil, steam, pressure cook or bake the pastels when you're ready to serve. Use a strainer or a rack or even a bamboo steamer to steam them for about 45 minutes. Pressure cook for 15 minutes, or if it's frozen, do it for 20 minutes. You can also bake these at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. And that's how I make pastels. I hope this video is helpful and informative. Thank you so much for watching. If you tried the recipe, share it with me on social media. I always love connecting with you. I hope you have a happy holiday season. Until next time, bye!